Good morning. Today I've got something super special for you if you're willing to hear it. And I don't say that lightly because not everybody is ready to heal in this way. But what we're talking about today has made the difference in my healing journey, bar none. It's the thing I talk about the most. So, today, I am super privileged to bring to you Jin Ong, who comes from the platform of the art of listening to your body. Now, Jin is a professionally trained osteopath and psychosomatic therapist. I've got it written down because she has so many feathers to her cap. She is a Western acupuncturist, herbalist, intuitive, and practical manifester. The things she's manifested in her life is insane. Okay. So if you don't believe me, go follow her along on Instagram and all those things, the art of listening to your body. Her story is truly incredible. I am very privileged to say that I have worked with her on practitioner training that she held many years ago and have kept in touch with her ever since because we both have a belief that our traumas, our pains, our stresses all manifest in some form of physical disease. And often not addressing the emotions and the traumas and the stresses is what stops us from feeling better, even if it's a disease like lipedema that supposedly cannot be cured by any means other than liposuction. I would like to dig into today how we feel better right now. How do we feel better even if we can't afford liposuction? How do we feel better even if we struggle to walk and do the exercise and eat the right foods? How do we feel better right now? So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, welcome, Jin.
Kylie, it's so cool. I was just saying, I am talking to a completely different person to the version of you that I met a few years ago. You look different, you're still bubbly as ever, but
Thank
I'm just
you.
so excited about what we're going to talk about.
I know. And back then, I really had no clue. The topic we're going to talk about today of lipedema, I had no clue that I had it. So a lot of things had to like come into play for me to get to where I am. But from my understanding so far, which is why I wanted to talk to you, because I'm sure you have a completely different stance on what I'm about to say, is that I feel like for the first time, oh, this is something I might be having to battle for the rest of my life. So I don't know what you know about lipedema, but for anybody watching that's just happened across this and doesn't know about lipedema, lipedema is an issue of the lymphatics. You're born with it. Up to 11% of women have it, which is a massive, massive statistic. It is driven by hormones and estrogen, and my understanding is there's a missing peptide in the gut. There's like so many different things that cause it. It's asymmetrical, so a lot of people mix it up with lymphedema, and lymphedema is not. It usually comes about by some kind of damage of the lymphatic system or a lymph node's been removed after cancer, that kind of thing. Lipedema is it's also considered. I remember the lady that did diagnose me. So I went to I with my thyroid, I'd go through stages of oh, what am I going to work on now? Because it was always easier in my head to work on a symptom than it was to what's the root cause and all that kind of thing. So I was going through a stage, this was before I moved up here, where I was like, oh, I'm going to work on my fluid. I'm going to work on the fluid retention. Edema is part of thyroid disease, you know. So I found this lymphatic drainage lady who worked from home. She was an oncologist nurse and worked with lymphedema. I did not know this when I went to her. I sat down beside her and I said, oh, I've got thyroid disease. I just want to work on my fluids. So some, lymphatic drainage I thought would be a great idea. And she said, oh, can you just lift your skirt for a second? And I was wearing a dress, so it was easy to pull off for a massage. I had no idea what the lymphatic drainage was going to be at this point. And she looked at my legs and she goes, oh, you're a lippy lady. And I went, I'm a what? And, 4 years of college, nobody talked about lipedema. It did not come up once. And I said, what's that? And she goes, oh, you've got lipedema. It was just like black and white. She says, oh, no, no, there's no ifs, buts, or, questions. You've got lipedema. I had all the hallmark symptoms, cuffing at the ankles, fat pads at the front of my knees, an overhang at the back of my knees. The fat sort of stopped at the upper arm fat. 30% of women with lipedema get really large upper arms, which I did. I've had surgery now, but it kind of stops at your elbows and it sort of has another overhang there. Your feet and hands are normal size, so that's really kind of evident. So yeah, that sort of, I didn't really understand at that time when she said to me, what it was, just the impact that it has. So I've gone through this, years of working on my thyroid, working on my weight. I finally, after weight loss surgery, dealt with the weight and that sort of thing. But now I'm at this stage of, yes, I've lost 60 kilos, which is like 130 pounds. However, the lipedema is still there. So that's what started me now delving into, okay, what is it? What is it metaphysically and emotionally? Because that's why I found you all those years ago. That's always interested me as to how our feelings impact that. And the other thing that I found out about lipedema is that it's a lack of joy in life, which is like, oh, that's a bit sad. And yeah, so I'm now on this journey of digging into it. What's the best diet for me, which so far at this point is carnivore. That seems to be what all the doctors say about it. And I do know when I go off it, the cuffing at the ankles swells up instantly. I can go up 2 or 3 kilos overnight if I eat carbs, this kind of thing. But also dealing with it emotionally, because this is something that many women have no idea that they've got it. I battled, couldn't work out, because you can't diet and exercise it away. This fat goes into your interstitial tissue, and so it's stuck in a place that you can't do anything about it unless you have liposuction. And so I'm now in this space of, what else can I learn about it from all aspects, and how can it change? So have you heard of lipedema?
I love that. I'm just so fascinated. I hope I can just like collect all of my thoughts for the questions that I have for you.
Mm.
So I've heard of lipedema, but not in that much depth. And I haven't specifically worked with someone who has come to me and said, I have lipedema. And so the biggest thing that I love is how you've talked about this has been a journey. Years ago when we met, and then I think it was a couple of years ago, I was like, Kylie, what's happened? You
Yeah.
look completely different. And yeah, you've seen the journey that you have gone on, because back then you didn't present and say, hey, I've got this. It was, hey, I've got some thyroid issues and some weight issues. And I love how you're going on this search now of what's deeper on the emotional level. How can I live life to contribute to my health and my well-being and physicality? Because that's where I'm really big on is, okay, you might be given the diagnoses, and it's really amazing when it can set you on this path of solutions and things that you can do externally. But ultimately, I'm about, well, how is this condition actually affecting you, whether or not you have a name for it or not? But it's so fascinating. And I think you speak about things in a really grounded way when you do, embrace conventional medicine, or you really are in the natural world as well. You're in the woo-woo world as
I
well.
am. I have a foot in both worlds for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just been incredible to see how you're growing and how you're evolving. And I think that's the biggest part of the journey of working with someone, is they're the right fit for you at a certain point in your journey. So once upon a time, you were all about the thyroid, and now you've discovered lipedema from this practical and this energetic sense. So I'm really curious. I guess the question came up for me is, you said you've still got the lipedema. So is it that it's one of those things like the gene's there, but it doesn't have to express itself? Like, can you turn the gene off? And what are the symptoms that you might still experience that says you still have lipedema, and how do you keep on top of that?
Okay, so from what I understand, yes, you're born with it and it runs in families. Okay, so my mum, I never would have considered her to be, because most lipedema women that you see usually have, tiny waist, unless they've got the upper arms, tiny upper body, and then the lower body is really misshapen. If you didn't know any better, you'd go, "Oh my God, how does she have cellulite that bad?" Because it's so lumpy. It's a
Mm.
round balls of fat that gets like trapped. So you're born with it, is my understanding. They have not done nearly enough research on it yet. They're trying to, get the word out there and have women understand. And so my mum, when she was here, after I started talking about it on YouTube and so on, she said, "Do you think I've got lipedema?" And I looked at her like in her knickers and went, "Oh my God, you do."
Mm.
Not nearly as bad as I have it, but then some women have it way worse than myself. My understanding, the biggest driver is estrogen. So if you're overweight and you're carrying extra estrogen, which fat cells are estrogen cells, if your hormones are out. So from what I've seen, I think they did a study on lipedema women, and I think it was like 30% of them had thyroid disease or something like that. It was like a high percentage had thyroid disease. Um, and I think it's the missing link for the women that get put on thyroid medication and then can't lose the weight, which was me. And
Yeah.
I always growing up had like thick legs. I wasn't big, but I had thick, column-like legs.
Mm.
So it's very much yes, you're born with it, but hormones will dictate how bad it gets, I
Mm.
guess. I still don't know enough about it. This is why I'm starting to interview people, because I'm like, tell me more. Like, what else can I do from every perspective? Um, so yeah, so different people, and there's different stages of lipedema, stage 1 to stage 3 or 4.
Mhm.
And it can then, if you get the higher stages and you are not keeping it in check, it can then progress to lymphedema. So
Okay.
there's then a situation called lipolymphedema. So
Wow.
yeah, so to me, I don't care what stage I'm in. I would want to be keeping it in check no matter what stage I was in, and not
Yeah,
making it worse. Because
absolutely.
yeah, the other things that come along with it is hypermobile joints, and I had a double knee replacement in 2020. I had no
Mm.
idea. Like I had, by the time I had the double knee replacement, I had 4 meniscal tears, a ruptured ACL, and a Baker's cyst, and bone on bone, likely caused by the hypermobile joints.
Mm.
So there's things that come along with it, but the actual lipedema, yeah, to my way of thinking, and even though I've lost 60 kilos, which is a whole person, yes, the fat pad on the front of my legs, knees, the overhang at the back of my knees, and the cuffing on the ankles, very evident. Like,
Okay.
yeah, you can, it's still like, oh, okay, yeah. There's no getting rid of that unless I have. So like the arms are gone because they did the liposuction and then took the excess skin away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do
that
you
is the
know,
only way of getting rid of it.
right, and I love that. I love that you shared that with me, because I'm like, all right, you look like you've lost a bunch of weight. What have you done? And you talked about having surgery as well. So I'd love to hear. I know you're interviewing me, but I'd
No,
love to hear
no, no.
your
This is a
story because
conversation.
it's
It's not so
great.
much yeah. Okay, so here's
But
what
also, but
happened.
also, what I'll say is, I think I first came across lipedema actually on social media on Instagram. Like, I love watching people's weight loss transformation journeys where they put it into a short reel. And then I
Mm,
came across a woman where she was talking about lipedema and looking at her body. It's not just the excess stretched skin. It's like these, almost like these
globules, they call
yeah,
them.
globules,
Mm.
and it almost looked like she had scars or like ulcers that had healed on there. And so, yeah, it's really fascinating. So there's some incredible people like you who are talking about it and showing what it looks like, because it did look different to a lot of other people's weight loss journeys and pictures that I had seen.
It is, and it's heartbreaking. I want to, when I see women in the shops that very
I
clearly,
tell them.
I want to tell them you can't run up and say,
Yeah.
hey, do you know you have this? But for me, it was like this moment of, oh, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
In so much as I wasn't lacking willpower. It wasn't because I can't control myself with food and that kind of thing. In fact, I ate too little because that's a common thyroid issue is not eating enough food. And that was always my issue was like I could easily forget to eat meals. So it made no sense to me for years. Like I took a whole year off one year when I was 36, went to the gym every day, was like super strict. At the end of that year, I weighed 2 kilos more.
Mm.
So when I found out that I had this and when I started to dig deeper into it, it was such a relief that like, oh, it wasn't something I was or wasn't doing. It was just, an abnormality in my system, in my metaphysical system, who knows, whatever.
Yeah.
But the reason I ended up with weight loss surgery, and I never thought I'd have it because I didn't, in my head, you had weight loss surgery when you couldn't control your hunger.
Mm.
So I was like, well, that was not my
So this is
problem.
gastric band surgery.
A gastric sleeve.
Oh, gastric
I don't
sleeve.
think they do the banding anymore because
Okay.
it doesn't work or it has too many problems. But this is a
Mm.
sleeve. So they cut away a portion of your stomach so that you're left with just kind of like a tube,
Mm.
basically.
Mm.
So it was never a consideration, never even crossed my mind. And then I had a lady from thyroid school come to me from America and say, oh, look, I want you to coach me through weight loss surgery. And I was like, I'm not your person. I know nothing about it. And I don't like helping people that I know nothing
After you
about.
had your weight loss surgery?
No, this was before. This
Oh,
was the
okay.
reason I had it. This was the
Oh, so
starting point.
interesting.
She came to me and I said, she's like, no, no, I really want you to do it. And I was like,
Wow.
look, let me research and I'll come back to you. No promises, but let me. And so I did some research and it was literally, I started looking at studies on PubMed and things like that. And I started to come across success stories of people both with Hashimoto's and lipedema that lost weight having because of it's something, and I still don't know, and nothing I've found answers this. Something to do with that missing peptide, the weight loss surgery, because you're removing gut hormones, something happened. And yeah, anyway, I decided I was going to have it. And I went out and I said to my husband, I'm going to have weight loss surgery. He was like, what? But you don't eat anything. I said, well, I've got nothing to lose, have I? Like, if I don't eat anything already, that's the worst case scenario in my head. And so I went back to this lady and said, not only will I coach you through it, I'm going to do it myself. And she was like, oh,
Wow.
I've changed my mind.
Oh, that's why she crossed paths with you.
She was the angel sent to me, or
Oh my
the
God.
universe that was like, oh, here you go, you need to research this. And I did.
Well, it's funny, right? Because we've got to look at who is presenting us and what is it that we've got to look into. Why has that person been sent to,
To make us
you know,
research. Yeah,
what's the message? What's the next step that we take
yeah.
for ourselves?
Oh,
Wow.
it was so bizarre. And so this was 2022, and we went off to Singapore. We were just about to go on holidays. Went to Singapore, and when I came back, I had an appointment down in Perth to see a surgeon. The surgeon said to me, I said, look, I've got this thing called lipedema. Most doctors have no clue what it is. And he goes, oh, yeah, yeah, I've been reading about that. And I was like,
Ah,
okay. And he's like, yeah, he said, from what I understand, it's a missing peptide in the stomach. And I was like, you know more than anybody else I've ever spoken to. And he goes, yeah, he said, there's not enough information. So he was just like, straight away, I was like, right, yep, I'm doing this. I'm the right person. And even when I woke up from surgery, anyone that's got lipedema in the arms will know the excruciating pain of having your blood pressure taken.
oh,
It's next level pain. It is not, I think having my child was less pain than having your blood pressure taken.
wow.
It's incredible. Well, it's also called painful fat syndrome.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is where I'm just because we probably talked about like the sensitivity of fat on the training as
Absolutely.
well. Mm.
Absolutely. So I woke up and the doctor had made sure that the blood pressure cuff was around my forearm, not around my arm. And so I was
Mm.
like, oh, I so picked the right doctor, even though he
Mm.
didn't specialize in weight loss surgery, it was, he didn't market himself as a weight loss surgeon. I was like, wow. So, and then the weight just literally a kilo a week without fail, just kept going. And I was like, I felt like I was eating the same amount, apart from that beginning point where you can eat next to nothing. But I've had periods of my life where I've eaten nothing because I've been sick. Like I had adult chicken pox, didn't eat for 2 weeks, didn't lose a pound.
Yeah.
I've had wisdom teeth that went wrong, didn't eat for 2 weeks, didn't lose a pound. So I've had periods of my life that not eating did not result in weight loss, never.
Yeah.
Yet something happened after the weight loss surgery, and by then I had studied, I was a naturopath, I was all the things. So I knew more about health in the body than most people. But yeah, it just came off, and
Yeah.
go figure. And here I am. So yes, I feel better. My limbs, so I can walk now without pain, because it's like walking with cement legs with lipedema.
Mm.
So all of that's changed. However, it's still evident, so I don't wear shorts because my legs, plus the loose skin is insane after that much
Mhm.
weight loss. So yeah, so it's still there. It's not going anywhere, but that was what led me to weight loss surgery. And I know I've had comments of like, oh, you must have just been eating behind closed doors. And I have to admit, that was probably my thought process, because before weight loss surgery, I never considered it because I knew that eating was not my problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a
It's such
really
a behind the scenes journey, isn't it? And there's so much judgment and criticism, and everyone wants you to try their thing. And this is where, the path opens up for us when we're ready. And I love that
yeah,
we still keep in touch because, back in the day when you had your knee replacements, I was probably telling you, okay, you've got to get clear on the direction with your career, or you've got to change that.
yeah,
I think we were in the midst of it, or what's your role in your relationship, and questioning those kinds of things, but also exploring the metaphysical pathways. I think it can open doors. It's not always the answer. And yeah, you're like, right, the answer for me was, for you personally, was this weight loss surgery. You went on a journey, but you're still open to the metaphysical. And I love how that woman asked you to coach her, because I've particularly worked with people in the dietetic space, and they might support people through gastric band surgery. I've also worked with clients who, sorry, gastric sleeve surgery, or whatever it's called now, right?
yeah,
And when you have such a rapid change in your body physically, you do feel different emotionally. So I say emotions, physical influences your emotional state, but your emotions create your physical state. And when you go through gradual changes, you get to adjust to that. Sometimes it feels really slow, but when you go through a rapid change, or if someone is to have liposuction, there can be such an identity shift in that. And I actually, I can't remember who was talking about it. Probably shouldn't have brought it up, but I just remember seeing this interview, someone standing up in the audience and really alluding to the fact that, oh, actually, so I cannot remember who it was, but they were talking about how it's quite common for when people go through massive weight loss for the relationship dynamics to change.
oh yeah. And that came up. And do you know what? Because I'd started kinesiology prior to this, um, through another universe-led thing. And so that was what I worked on consistently, not so much the relationship, but relationships in general.
Yeah.
And I am super lucky, like Ollie has been nothing but full on support in my team, and they got to a point, I think I was about, I don't know, 30 kilos down, 25, whatever it was. We were going to Bali. This is in 2023. So I had it in October 2022. We were going to Bali in June 2023 for 4 weeks. And I think must have been April, May, something like that. He was like, oh, I think I need to lose some weight, right? So he was like, I could see he was like starting to go, oh, hang on a sec, a bit of FOMO, you're doing well, all the things. And I said to him, you know what? The last time you lost a lot of weight, you just cut out the crap. And my husband's never eaten vegetables. Peas and mash is about it for him. Never, never has he been a vegetable person. And I said, look, the last time you lost a lot of weight, you just cut out all the crap, which left him with meat. And at the time, it was like, oh, he lost heaps of weight and he felt good and his blood pressure was under control and all the things. So I said, maybe you should just do that again. But the last time he did that was before I studied, right? So the naturopath in me went, oh, I'm not sure he should be just eating meat. I better research this. So started digging into it. And now it's got a name called the carnivore diet.
Mm,
And what I did was, I actually did it with him. I've always been that person in relationships and families where I've been like, I like eating veggies and salads. He does not. I'll make two separate meals. And people,
mm,
I hear lots of women go, no, I'm not making three separate meals, two separate, whatever it is. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't want to eat what he likes eating. So why should I expect him to eat what I like eating? And it was about me. It wasn't about somebody else. So I was always like, I made separate meals anyway. Because of the weight loss surgery, I was like, and I started with the carnivore. I started seeing that a lot of people after weight loss surgery did well on it because you're getting more bang for your buck with such a small amount of food. So I started doing it with him. And he lost weight doing that and always has. And I lost more weight doing that. I'd been a kilo a week. And then I started doing this with him and I started losing 3 kilos a week. But
mm,
anyway, back to him and the relationship. A lot of what's weird? I have always, well, since I was an adult, 20 was when my thyroid kicked it in and I put on 50 kilos, like literally within a year. I've always been the big friend, the big relation, the big girl. And suddenly I was not. I was smaller than some of my friends. I was smaller than my husband. His shirts for the first time in my life, I could wear like a dress, which was just crazy to me. Most of my friendships and our relationship are stronger and I'm blessed. I don't have a big friends circle. I stay pretty tight. Um, and it was a concern with the relationship because I do hear that, but I also worked on myself and all with my videos. If anyone's watched my videos for up to now, I'm like the inner work, the inner work, the inner work.
yeah.
If you don't do the inner work, then I don't. Then maybe people. I kind of liken weight loss surgery, I guess, to midlife crises, which is your Chiron return and all that kind of thing for those human design people out there. Um, where suddenly you go, oh, for the first time in my life, I can buy whatever clothes I want to buy. I can, oh, men might be looking at me, or I don't know. You have this, oh my God, and I think if you're not grounded and um, understanding of why you're doing it, then it would be easy to get carried away with, oh, this is all this attention. Oh, I can wear
Yes.
these nice clothes. Funnily enough, with clothes, my relationship with clothes, I thought I'd be buying all the fancy, boho, lacy. Oh my God, I couldn't be less interested in clothes now.
It's so funny because, like, I love how when you go on the journey, you think you want one thing, and then when you walk the path, it's actually something different, which is just to say, go walk the path, go find out, especially when you're thinking you're wanting material things, it's really what is the feeling we're after. And even though you've had these massive physical shifts, I feel like you're still the Kylie that I know, but also the Kylie that's evolving. And you've
Mm.
always just had this really beautiful nature about you with how you present. So
Thank you.
it's
That's
honestly
nice.
amazing.
So, what is your take? I would love to hear from your metaphysical point of view, and you have the platform, The Art of Listening to the Body. And my first question there would be, do you think we even listen to our bodies anymore? Do you think people listen to their symptoms or did we never listen to our symptoms, but now they're just so much worse?
Mm.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, so there's new information that's landed for me recently, having carried through this body of work for so long. But in short, I feel like we're all different personalities and we all have our different thresholds or turning points as to how much pain we can experience before we actually decide to change, because the decision is all within ourselves. So some people will listen to this and go, oh, I can actually prevent. And I very much am one of those people. I'll listen to the stories and I'll feel grateful that I can walk around and not feel like I've got cement in my legs, or things like that. It's like, how can I make the most of my body now? And I have been someone who has been in a state of pain, but curbed it before it got really major, where I had to like stop working, or, stop taking part in my life. Do we listen to our bodies? So what's come to fruition for me is, the more I've shed layers and the more I listen to my body, is realizing the body is probably one of the last things that speaks to us. Before that, it's actually our environment, our animals, it's the conversations, it's the clients that drop in for us. And actually being able to listen to those threads and those repeated patterns before our body needs to speak with thyroid problems or lipedema or so on. Because again, I'm curious if you've done this research, is it one of those genes that you're born with, but does it have to switch on?
I don't know, because I don't think they know enough.
No.
There's no genes attached to this at this point. There's literally, in the scheme of things, considering, I think I read somewhere recently that diabetes is 11% of people as well. So
Yeah,
it's the
so that
same.
was interesting. You talking about the thyroid, the diabetes now, and some of the other, I guess, coexisting disease states.
Comorbidities,
And
yeah.
when you worked with me, we talked a lot about the Ayurvedic constitutions, and this is what I would categorize as someone being in the kapha
Mm,
excess. And we're
mm.
born with a true nature, a constitution type for us to lean into. And I know you're just like so human design savvy, is that it's all about these personality types, constitution typing, and we've got to look at it in a positive light. So, how is it that we can use it to our strengths? And I said to you, are you a sixth line in human design? Because like coming into your 50s is like, wow, look at what's happening.
Yeah.
And now
Mm.
you're just sharing your wisdom, even if it doesn't make sense to people, like the people who need to hear it, the people with lipedema. But this is also speaking to everything, right? The people that need to hear it will hear it.
Yeah.
Anyway, combined with my fifth line, we just speak the truth, right? Anywho, we might be going off track for some people, but doesn't
That's all
matter.
right.
Um, yeah, so constitutionally, I would just go, these are all kapha in excess manifestations. And kapha is great, but when it gets excess, all of the doshas are great, but when they get excess or too deficient, that's when it starts to wreak havoc on our body. So someone who is just puffing up, having fluid retention issues, gaining weight all over their body, that's very kapha sign for me. Thyroid, especially low thyroid Hashimoto's, and this slowing down is also very kapha. Diabetes. And how I use the Ayurvedic constitutions is I look at the early signs and symptoms before someone actually has to get to that medical diagnosis of Hashimoto's, of lipedema, of diabetes. Before diabetes comes insulin resistance.
That's a
Before
big
that,
thing. Insulin
yeah.
drives, insulin drives the lipedema as well, for sure.
Yeah. So when people talk about all of these connections, I'm always instantly in the back of my mind, my filing cabinet going, oh, this is a kapha excess. And how can we look at the true nature of this person and what parts they might be abandoning of themselves? Because I find the people who are naturally the solid build type, and you talked about this being you when you were younger, with all the marketing, modeling, all that kind of stuff, the kapha person is probably the person who doesn't want to embrace being the kapha. They don't want to be the solid built person. They go to the gym and they actually just beef up rather than becoming slimmed and toned, but that's not their true nature. If we look at some of the positives, they're very supportive. They're really great at supporting people in the back end of business and administration. And some people think, oh, admin. But for me, having an amazing admin and supportive person is just so valuable.
Mhm.
Sometimes being behind the scenes, you like to help the other person shine. What are some other qualities of Kapha? Like really great mama bears, I say, like
Mm.
family, tribe, community. And when you're in balance, you're just amazing to be around. But if you're in a bad mood, everyone feels it,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So again, we can talk about all the medical predispositions, but if we come back before we even get those symptoms or those disease states, what are the earlier signs and symptoms? well, if you get sick a lot of the time, it's usually snotty. Kapha people usually resist the emotional work, but you totally lean into it because they're worried that the floodgates and the tears and the fluid are just going to never ever stop. But you just got to let it flow and it will. There's always an end to it, right? There's the next evolution. What else can we look at with Kaphas? Well, it's even aligning yourself to the way you want to work. It's the environment. Now, this is not for everyone, but the Kapha dosha type people, they tend to really struggle in winter when it's dreary, it's wet, it's cold. So, and you embrace this, you go away in winter, although you're in Perth, right?
I'm up in Karratha now, which is extremely hot. I call it
Okay. And
our
dry.
no, it's humid.
Oh, okay.
Usually, because we're in a company home, so our front door, it's like they're called cluster homes. It's like a park home, I guess, in a caravan park.
Yeah.
So our front door is a glass sliding door, and the decider of the day is when I pull back the blinds when I'm saying goodbye to Ollie, and how misted over, how condensed the door is
Oh, right.
as to
Okay.
what kind of humidity we're having that day.
Well, that's interesting because I know you've always been drawn to like Southeast Asia, which is quite humid.
Same, yeah.
Um, but yeah, for me, I'm very sensitive to environment. I don't do well in heat and I don't do well in humidity. But Kapha dominant type people who would have all of these things that we've been talking about, they tend to not like the real wintry, overcast type weather, can get very easily depressed. And so just noticing, rather than segmenting out all of these symptoms and these issues, is how can we look at ourselves as a whole, rather than as, but part of the journey is what symptom can I work on next? And that
Mm.
sets you on this pathway. And I love that that therapist said to you, lift up your skirt.
Yeah,
And
you're a lippy
what?
lady. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. And calling you a lippy lady. Like if you were out of balance and you hadn't done the inner work, you'd be like, oh my gosh, you would have been so probably personally offended being in that
Yeah.
state. But you're always curious, Kylie. And I'm actually wondering, Karatha, if you know our friends Damien and Joe.
Oh, Joe. Oh, I better not say their surname.
Oh no, they're great people. Well, I don't know how to pronounce their surname, like Muller.
Oh, no, they're no, because I do know
Okay.
a Joe up here from international classes with different teachers. So I
Oh,
thought,
okay.
oh, no, her name's not that there. Yeah, no, I don't. I could do though, because I worked in a chiropractor's office for the last year and a half, which I've just finished as well,
Yep.
which was fascinating. So I know a lot more people than I think I know in this small town,
Yeah.
but it's very hot and humid up here. I mostly live in air conditioning, like right now, and but I say to my husband, this was a really good training ground for Southeast Asia, and I know from living up here that yep, we're fine. We can go live there because a lot of people can't live there because of the heat.
Yeah. Yes. I have my threshold. I hit about 4 weeks, but I haven't put myself in that environment for a long time. And I wonder now, with all the emotional work that I've
Interesting.
done, if I would have, a wider capacity for it. But for me, heat and humidity is holiday. It's like not a working environment. I like dry, cold, temperate.
Yeah.
Um, but the other thing that we touched on was sensitive fat tissue. And so
Painful.
again, like what's the overall metaphysical? I'm actually looking at this more from a dosha perspective. And then for me, it would be working with the person as an individual as to, well, what are some of the comments people have said? What is some of the experiences you've had when you've gone into the medical system? What have you tried and how do you feel about where you're at? Do you know that something else is possible? And that's what sets us on the journey. But usually, when people have got that fat sensitivity, because we can have very numb fat as well, which is very protective, but the sensitivity is almost like, oh, it's all rising to the surface. And actually, I'm recalling that I think we had conversations about this all those years ago. It's all rising to the surface, like ready to pop,
Mm. No,
ready to
that,
be felt.
sorry.
Ready to be felt, like whatever emotions are there. Because it's when we get into emotional and energetic alignment, that's when we take action.
What just popped up for me there is that the kind of women that I'm coming across with this, very thyroidy women in so much as very stoic, puts on the mask, gets on with life, which was me for 30 years. Like, I'll just get it done. You never complain about things because you don't want people to go, oh, that's just because you need to lose a few pounds, right? And so the pain of all that, is that what you're saying? The pain of all those pushing down, that
Yeah.
you can't do this, comes to the surface.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why quite often when we're faced with physical disease state issues, because this is not just about physical problems, the way I operate, it can be the mental, the behavioral, the energetic, like let's look at what's happening in life. Um, is that when quite often when you go down these pathways of addressing physical, there's an emotional aspect to deal with too. Some people would like to segment it, but usually we end up at some point looking at the emotional. And it's so rewarding because it doesn't just impact our health, but it impacts all areas of our life.
It's the one thing that I know that for years I've been wanting to talk about on my different platforms, like on Thyroid School, and just people don't want to hear it. People just do not want to hear. You've got to do the inner work. Because so where do you even start? Like, you've got all the things. I was telling my husband, because when we do our walks of an afternoon, that's our talk time. And there was a lady that had sent me a private message after a YouTube video, and I was like, she's got this, and she's got this, and she's got this. And I said to my husband, where do you even start if they're not willing to look at the emotional aspects of this? Which I find fascinating that people don't want to look at that, because everything we do comes down to our feelings. That's the part
Mm,
I can't make sense of. We
yeah,
all want to feel better. We want to feel strong. It's all the feels, but we don't want to do the work around the feels. So
yes,
we
yes.
all want to do oh, no, what should we eat, and what exercise should we do, and what surgeon can we? I did a search on YouTube the other day for lipedema, the top three, and because I've got, behind the scenes vidIQ and stuff like this, the top three channels for lipedema are surgical channels. So
Mm,
people just want to have the surgery, which fair, I get it. I've lived it. I understand that. But nothing, like, nobody wants to just like, oh, but how
yeah,
do I feel about this? It's just fascinating
yeah.
to me. What's your take on that?
Yes. So many takes on it. Um, First, I'm going to say just keep sharing, Kylie. You're going to reach the right people because this is absolutely fascinating. And just like the woman who came to you to ask for coaching for weight loss surgery, and then you said, I'm going to walk the path. Um, I feel like it's the embodiment of, well, look at you now. Yes, let's judge you physically, but then when we connect with you in this way, it's like, wow, you're a real inspiration. And to work with someone who doesn't just go down the practical pathway, because let's be honest, there's a lot of practitioners that just actually default to the practical because that's what the majority of people want. But what I'll say is, gosh, I say no to so many people because I can tell they're not ready. Or people say no to my work because it feels too hard. And I just wish that people would walk the path. And so for me, it's sharing the stories of myself, my clients, and it's like, this is where it all started. This is where things really start to speed up in a positive way. But for me, what I have noticed structurally is that people are in these different stages or phases of their healing. And I wrote about this in chapter 3 in my book that people can download for free because I'll give you the cliff notes
Hold
of
up
it.
your book. Everybody's got to see. Just hold it up for a sec,
Oh,
just while we're
yeah.
talking about it. It is the most, if I wasn't packing down to go to it's like cloth, is it? It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's right. So this one, there's only going to be a limited number, but there's going to be a paperback, and this one's
Oh,
in color as
I'm
well.
going to have to
Um,
suffice with the Kindle version.
Yeah, yeah, no, all good. But just because I spell it out really well in that chapter and people can get it for free, which is why I'm talking about it. But there's this stage and phase when you're in pain and the body is overwhelmed, it's in survival mode. And that is when we're just like, I need to fix it. I need someone to give me the pill, give me the surgery.
So that's
And
the proverbial rock bottom. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, sort of, sort of. I mean, rock bottom is when you just can't even like take yourself to go and see someone or research or find a solution. So, like that's why it's great we're speaking about this to try and catch people before that. It's like, right, I just need to go on the path and the next person will open up because the universe knows I've made a decision. But it's okay to be in that position. And sometimes I meet people and like, you actually probably need to go to the doctor and just get through this surgery and then I'll talk to you. Um, Anyway, so that's the first stage where we kind of look for external validation. We do look for fix-its. But ideally, we take that solution and we honor a commitment to do the deeper work. And that's when, as we go deeper, we start to actually tap into our intuition and we don't fully hand our power over to someone else. We start to seek out different opinions and choose what feels good to us. So we're making some of our own grounded decisions because we're in a better place emotionally. And then the third stage and phase is like, wow, you're just attracting the right people conventionally, alternatively, energetically, relationships in your life. And you're just deeply rooted in intuition. And this is where it's like, okay, well, what's the next steps? How do I bring more joy into my life? How do I be? And for a long time, we've been talking about you moving to Southeast Asia, right? And I'm just like, Kylie, I swear, when you do it, even though the logic might not make sense, it's just like, look out.
I know, I can't wait. And I have no idea what my work will look like or what anything like. And I know before that my husband's going to struggle. He's not a changer like I am. I thrive on change and something different. Having said that, sorry, more human design for those who have no idea what this is. I'm going to put a link in the thing in the bottom if you are interested in this. But he's also a manifesting generator 4/6,
Oh,
same as
wow.
me. But he's worked in the same industry since he was 15. But in Gene Keys, he's a company man.
Mm,
So that's what abundance looks like to him as a company, line
yeah.
5. Yeah. So he will struggle, but me, I can't wait. I'll be off and running. So I
Man, you're
can't wait
so
for that.
patient. It's just like, look out. But he'll always find something. You fourth lines always find something. You just got to tell people what it is you want to
Oh, he's
do.
he's started to find a few things. So, because I've said to him, you, and a few people have said to him, until you find something other than the work you've done for the last 35 years, you're not going to want to go.
Yeah.
Me, I would have left 2 years ago. So,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
because I'm just like, but I'm that person that will just, oh, let's have a go at that. Let's do this. Oh, let's not think it through. I'm a complete opposite to him, yet we're both the same MGs, four
Yeah.
sixes, which
Yeah.
is fascinating how people can be so different but so the same.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think, this is a great thing to talk about as alongside lipedema or
Yeah.
thyroid is like you can have the same diagnosis, you can have the same human design, profile lines, maybe not going into the
The
nitty-gritty
channels and the
details,
gates. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But you're not the same. Like
No.
everyone is completely unique. And this is why we dive deeper into the work. And why else do people want to avoid it? Well, again, just part of the pathway. I think the best thing you can do is invest in your emotional self because again you're looking at all facets of life, not just hyper focusing on health, but pain, health issues, or a relationship issue can be the gateway into something opening up and actually creating more pleasure in your life. But I talk a lot about manifestation as well, but my foundation is rooted in emotional work. This is where I get my messages. So when I certainly was doing an interview with a client as well, and I find that, people like you that I've worked with, as you do more of this work on yourself and you step into the future version of you, you become more attuned to when people are ready or not. You can hear it in their language, you can see it in the way they move or the behaviors, the things that they complain about, the things they celebrate or don't. And I still get a lot of messages from people saying, can you tell me what this is, what that is? And I struggle because my fifth line likes to go, well, my one line likes to go really deep. And more, I love metaphysical as an entry point, but it still doesn't give you your root and individual answer or message. And so for me, if someone doesn't know where to start, or I don't even know where to start, I always start people with processing their emotions because that's where the repeated messages and themes start to show up. And they're the messages that just simply help you move forwards in life, but they're not always easy to act on.
No.
But yeah, surrender
And I
to the
think for
process.
lipedema people, the easiest those emotions would be that lack of self-worth because they think they've done something wrong all their life,
Yeah.
that every diet they've tried that works for X, Y, and Z other people doesn't work for them. And,
Yes.
that I think that heartbreak of thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I lose this weight? What, because
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to. Um, it- it's funny because during this journey, I've come across people in my life who very clearly have lipedema,
Mm.
but not in a bad way. I actually have a friend who has got lipedema in a like a stage 3 way that it's very evident, but other people who have kept it at bay either through their diet, not knowingly, diet, like it's evident. But I think it's the people that have it's gotten further than stage 1, 2, 3, whatever, that the emotions. Do you think that it's scary to uncover those emotions of a
Yeah.
lifetime of people going, you're just lazy, you can't control yourself with food, there's something wrong
Mm.
with you, you're not attractive.
Yeah. Yes. And it's so liberating as well. And I think some people have the fear of like, they think that they're never going to overcome it. And there's a real transition point of do you need to actually process your emotions? I think we always have got some level of emotion to process, but actually what happens is as you uncover the layers, peel away the layers, it's no longer about emotional processing. It's about making moves forwards, stepping forwards, anchoring into a future vision of yourself. And so I never want people to stay forever stuck in processing their emotions. It's a kind of a sad place to be. And sometimes you've got to pull yourself out of it. You've got to have something to look forwards to that, also changes who you are in the present. It was interesting because I was talking to my mother-in-law the other day, not so much about the emotional stuff, but I love it because she gets my work. And again, I get where she's at, but there are some things that she's not willing to change yet or ever. And that's okay. It's just
Mm,
acknowledging that. And, I don't have to, I love having conversations with her because she's curious and yeah, I'll offer my advice, but when she's ready, she'll take it. But we often have laughs about it as well. So I think some people feel like, oh, I won't talk to Jin because this is what she's going to make me do. And I'm like, it's up to you. It's up to you whether or not you're going to do it.
yeah,
But there's an energy that people can carry where it's still pleasant to be around them, even though they know they're not making the moves or they
yeah.
know they're going to make it in the future. And there's the denial kind of energy that's really horrible, the victim energy that's not great to be around.
Mm.
But I am the person a little bit like the therapist that you saw who will say, this kind of story, like I can understand why people don't want to be around you because it's like the story you share over and over again. Like, let's change the story.
Yeah,
Sometimes we need to hear those hard truths.
we do. And I think that's the hardest thing. And it's facing it for yourself, I guess,
Yeah.
is knowing that and it's the judgment, right? And I know for me, having weight loss surgery, the
Mm,
thing before I said it out loud, even though in my head I was like, I knew that was the next step for me,
mm,
it took me a week to say it out loud because judgment. I
yeah.
studied for 4 years, spent, $40,000, 50,000 on education. Shouldn't I have been able to fix it for myself? I've
Yeah.
had people in, where I've been interviewed on carnivore websites where, people in the comments have said, I don't trust a naturopath that needed weight loss surgery. And I'm like, it was that kind of judgment that I
Yeah.
was terrified of. But then in the end, I got to, this is about me.
Yes.
It's not about that person or that person. And I'm so
Yeah.
glad I went with that, like, and
So
just,
glad you did too.
yeah.
Well, I love the way that you've got a real ownership of, well, I had surgery, but it's not the thing that saved me. Like I'm still doing the deeper work. It's like you take the pill and I come across people and they may not agree with me either. Is but I embrace conventional and I embrace alternative and I embrace the woo-woo stuff as well. And it's about meeting you where you're at on your journey. And for those people recognizing, okay, well, where did they start? And sometimes it's not until you're in the position of having a disease or a diagnosis that you actually find yourself thinking differently. And this is where, so a lot of us actually stop ourselves from making decisions moving forwards, especially when it's very outwardly obvious, breaking up in a relationship, a divorce, a separation, an affair, or having surgery because of the fear of judgment. And it's usually because we've actually been the person who's judged others. But actually, and I've done it myself,
Mm,
particularly I
same.
always use the example of being in the workplace and being a contractor working for someone, thinking they could do this better. And it wasn't until I owned my own business that I realized why they maybe chose to do the things that they did. So it's
Yeah.
not until we're in it. And that's where I go, right, I'm going to try and not judge as much as possible because it might actually hold myself back in the future when I want to change my mind around something.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's, I did a exercise quite a while back where I asked many people, I just reached out to like friends and family and said, oh, what's the thing you fear most? I was doing a bit of a research on, I forget what at the time, but the answers was what blew me away. Almost all of them, judgment was number one or two.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I talk about these metaphysical meanings, right, behind different conditions. But I feel like, again, these pain points that people come in with, it's always the gateway for this structure and this path that I've seen play out for people that when you shed away the layers, no matter what you're processing on, no matter what your disease state or pain point mentally, behaviorally, energetically is that you always come to this point of who am I in this world? What is the truth that I want to speak? And actually, if we look at this on a chakra level, this is actually only the lower three chakras. And you have another four, like the heart, the throat, the brow, the crown to step into. And so I feel like I'm in the midst of, stepping into the heart, definitely, already like tapping into these. But you don't just move through each chakra, you always move through all of them in conjunction. Sorry, I can't think of the
Unison, like,
yeah,
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 in
yeah.
unison. Yeah, it's like it's we our human mind just wants to separate things out so much. And so
Oh, so much.
yeah, like when I hear myself give the metaphysical meaning around skin issues because that was my major problem, you know, you can translate this to anything because this is all about coming back to our true nature. It is about feeling safe to express ourselves. And what I say about judgment and criticism is it's always there. I still experience it, not on a massive level, because my work is here to talk to people to rise up from it. Like I don't want to get pulled down by it. There's always judgment and criticism because you can't be everything to everyone.
No. And I
Mm.
read I read or saw or something, and I've delved into this work before, so I understood it, that our subconscious, our amygdala, does not know anyone other than ourselves,
Mm.
right? So if we are criticizing someone, judging someone, we're only judging ourselves, that part of ourselves that is triggered by that thought
Mm.
process, that emotion, that physical attribute, whatever it is. And I thought, oh, it doesn't stop us doing it, but it's
Yeah.
very much like, oh, yeah, okay. It's like that one finger forward, three fingers back. We can
Yeah.
only recognize something in somebody else if we have it ourselves,
Yeah.
you
It
know?
only triggers us because there's some sort of truth to it for
Yeah, that's
ourselves.
right.
We can turn triggers
Fear,
into activations.
whatever it is. That's right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I still continue to find it fascinating that, and this has been a really good for the last year and a half working at this Cairo because you've got people coming in and out the door, talking to you. I was like the barmaid of the Cairo, they tell you everything and the anxiety, and they're all so in their heads and about everything. And with some people that would have ongoing issues, I'd say, do you want to hear the metaphysical reason for that? And they always wanted to hear it, always
Oh,
wanted to
that's
hear it.
cool.
And without fail, I'd say, oh, that's, a lack of support, that low, like, and they'd look at you. And I'm talking men who are usually like, you know, and they would go, yep, that tracks.
Yeah.
Yet nobody wants to do anything about it. They
Yeah.
want to know the medical physical reason because they want to know that there's some other thing that they're not doing,
Yeah.
that it's not because of them physically what they're doing.
Mm,
But yet when it comes to actually working on that,
mm,
it's all good to say lipedema and lymphatic issues is a lack of joy in life, which
mm.
tracks because I am married to a very joyous man. He will stop and start singing, start dancing, and anybody looking in would go, really? He does that? I'm like, yeah, he does that, right? And he'll start singing, making up songs, and he won't stop until I join in, right? So he's been
Yeah.
brought into my life to help me experience joy because joy
Yeah.
is not a natural state for me. I'm
Yeah.
Capricorn rising. I'm like a hard worker. I just don't stop. Like keep going, keep going, keep going. But joy is not a natural state for me. So that tracked for me. Does it mean I automatically turn around and start working on the joy to help my lymphatics? No. I often check myself and go, how are you working on the joy? What brings you joy? I don't even stop to go, what things in my life bring me joy besides travel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's definitely a joy. That'll be interesting. Let's see if the lipedema disappears when I'm living my joy.
Yes.
But I still have a joyous life, I would say.
Mm.
However, I never stop to all the work I do with kinesiology and my own stuff. I don't ever put in my issues as lacking joy. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting that everybody loves to hear the metaphysical reason, but then doesn't follow through and do anything about it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's like, well, the question is how. And then again, we can start off with this masculine structure, which is, I always think is useful, but it's in the being, it's in the experience, and it requires us to change how we operate. It requires a lifestyle change a lot of
And
the
change
time.
is uncomfortable for human beings.
Yeah, but then you tap into like this amazingness of like being willing to change, and you actually embody more confidence to just try anything. And something I was listening to the other day, I cannot remember who I was listening to, but survival is actually survival of the fittest is actually how adaptable you are to a situation. And the most recent thing I would say is the pandemic. Like that showed us how adaptable are you? How
Absolutely.
are you when things get taken away from you?
How
Um,
resilient are you? How can you move with the changes? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I'm often saying, this is about teaching you to be more flexible and adaptable, and you've got to work with your nervous system. You've got to be able to stretch your nervous system so it's got more capacity. You've got to be able to get into a grounded state and not flip out, to be able to make decisions that actually free you, that move you forwards. And, it might be the decision to have surgery and just deal with the judgment and criticism that come from people. And, I was thinking this morning, the people who comment things like that person, I wouldn't trust a naturopath who goes down this pathway. Again, like where have they, what have they experienced? Because I've seen that, naturopathy is great at a certain point in time, and I'm a huge advocate for it. But sometimes you actually spend so much more money on testing and trying things out
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're just at this point where it was never going to work. And so,
Probably the most common thing I get from a message from thyroid school people is that they've spent $6,000 on testing, but can you please tell me this? They've got
yeah.
no answers. So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so there's again different personality types that really love the testing, but ultimately, as you said, it's like, how do you want to feel? Like, it doesn't matter what the piece of paper says. I've had a couple of clients that have definitely reduced their thyroid markers, and there's some that haven't. But actually, we're like, is this even an issue for you? Like, some of them have absolutely no symptoms, and some might say, well, this is going to cause these symptoms in the future. But who are we to say that as well?
that's
Because
right.
it's
That's a
really
belief
under
system as well, isn't it?
exactly like
Mm.
some people like I've always had low iron or I've always had low blood pressure. And again, I fit that into a constitutional picture. So a lot of what people say when they're in the integrative functional naturopathic world is, what are the normal parameters that we're measuring these blood tests off? And we know that when we do studies, there's always outliers, and
Mm.
outliers in the exceptional level.
Absolutely. And our ranges in our blood tests are based on the general population. which are not well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So,
So we get hooked on these numbers and again, a stage and a phase, and sometimes we'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that way. But honoring where you're at on your journey and just stay
yeah.
curious.
And I think the physical side is the starting point, right? It's the entry world, of any
A lot of
issue.
people.
And
Yeah.
then once you get to a certain point, you go, oh, nothing's changing. And I have to address it in different ways. So, Jin,
Yeah.
because time is ticking, tell everybody how they can work with you if they wish to. Do you even offer work, or tell them more about how they can get the special edition of your book, which, if you're not packing up to go overseas, I would highly recommend because it looks absolutely divine. Tell everybody.
Gosh, it's just been such an energetic frequency creating this book. And I'm always big on tapping into desire, not from a place of like real strategy or need, but again, it's a journey I've been on. So, yeah, when this book comes out, Healing Beyond the Diagnoses, it will be available globally as well. I think that this is a really great entry point for people. So, I'll get you to share the link in the show notes for Healing
Absolutely.
on the
Yep.
Diagnoses, and that will just point to wherever you can get it. I don't know how long the limited edition will be around for. It's like once it's sold, it's sold. I'm only doing 222 copies. Um, my Instagram, The Art of Listening to Your Body, also delve into that. But I do coach people one to one. I just work with a very select number of people. My main focus there is people with cancer who have been on a significant conventional, alternative, energetic, and emotional journey. And they come back to the deeper emotional work with me, and we expand on all facets of life. So I one to one coach people who are really ready to look at themselves on a deeper level. Um, I do have some free masterclasses. The Missing Link masterclass is also another great entry point. And I'm all about feeling. Just feel, is this speaking to you? Is your body responding? And then that will take you into the next piece.
Beautiful.
But yeah, I am a huge advocate for the emotional work. It's the starting point for manifestation. And I really
And
believe that
everybody wants to manifest something, right?
I know. Yeah. And it's just like, that's a great question. It's like, what do you want to manifest? And it's amazing how many people don't know what they need, want, or desire. And it's like, well, this is where we just have to say it and declare it. But I am a really big advocate for doing emotional work, whether it be in groups or one to one, with support, because we just simply cannot see what we cannot see.
Agreed. Agreed. Jin, it has been an absolute pleasure. And I thank you so much. And this conversation's ongoing. We're going to do this again because I could just talk endlessly to you about this stuff. And as you say, anybody that slightly resonates with this work, it doesn't matter whether you work with Jin or me or anybody, just start doing the emotional work, would be my request to everybody out there with lipedema or any other chronic disease. So until next time, we will see you then. Bye.